Now, Daniel, there has been recent military success in snuffing out Boko Haram's reign of terror and sort of expansion. Is that ongoing? Does it look promising?
Yes, we've seen real progress in the last 2 months. The Nigerian military, with support from other countries, has been able to push Boko Haram out of the major towns that it has been controlling in the last 6 months or so. But what we haven't seen yet is whether or not that's actually weakened Boko Haram and stopped them from being able to attack civilians. The raids that we've been documenting are still ongoing. And just last week, I spoke with a man from a town called Burutai, and Boko Haram attacked the town and executed more than 20 residents of the town. And that was just on the eve of the elections back in March of this year. So these attacks are still ongoing, and more needs to be done to protect civilians.
Speaking of the elections, what have you guys observed? And I mean, under Muhammadu Buhari, do you foresee what changes do you foresee? I mean, because I believe Goodluck Jonathan said that the Nigerian military has this under control. They don't necessarily need any international aid.
Yes, that's right. So we have been looking at some real failures in the military's approach to tackling Boko Haram. We've documented cases like Chibok abduction where the military had information about attacks that Boko Haram was planning, but didn't take adequate steps to protect civilians. You might remember the attack in January on Baga, where hundreds of civilians were killed. The military knew about that attack beforehand. The people on the ground in that town had requested reinforcements, but none had been sent. So what we're asking is for the new government to make sure that the military is able to adequately protect civilians. But we're also asking for a couple of other things. We would like to see the government make sure that the more than 1.2 million people that have been displaced by this conflict receive the urgent humanitarian assistance they desperately need. And lastly, we would like to see investigations into Boko Haram atrocities. As I mentioned, these are war crimes and crimes against humanity, and the victims of these atrocities do need to see justice done.
Last question, Daniel. Do you think Boko Haram, obviously they do have this very violent, militant element to them, but they are trying to create this independent Islamic state. Is there any way of doing that in a peaceful manner?
I mean, as you say, Boko Haram has tried to found a society based on its interpretation of Islam. What's really unfortunate is that Boko Haram is doing so by deliberately targeting civilians. It operates with this concept of unbelievers, which includes anyone that it believes to be associated with the government, and anyone that opposes them. And that includes Muslims as well as Christians in the northeast. So unfortunately, the way Boko Haram has gone about this is to deliberately target civilians and commit these war crimes.
All right, Daniel, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.